Get full access to RFR only on Patreon. Become a member of the RFR Patreon community to get more Rebel Force Radio. Bonus shows and content are available right now only at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
Penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Oh, it's time, all right. Time for your source for the Force, Rebel Force Radio. This week's show for September 9th, 2021. So great to be with you. Thank you for hanging out with us this week. Lots of stuff to talk about. It's some bad news. The Star Wars universe lost one of its own, well, kind of, with the very untimely and sudden passing of actor Michael K. Williams. And if you don't remember his Star Wars connection, we will certainly remind you. Plus, we've got more Star Wars and pop culture building on last week's mega segment, and something I'm particularly excited about. Something that's a little bit different for the Rebel Force Radio show that you're accustomed to here. That is, of course, unless you are a Patreon subscriber. But we've got a in-depth discussion being led by Rebel Force Radio Patreon supporter extraordinaire, Matt Rashid. He's also been with us here on Rebel Force Radio before. But we're going to be looking at the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars micro-series. And this is something that we haven't, it sort of predates our podcast adventures. And so it's something that we haven't really taken a deep dive into, though we're all very familiar with it. So that's going to be a lot of fun. That's coming up towards the end of the show, that discussion. And got one person to thank for that. And that's, of course, my good friend and yours. I almost said our good friend. My good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack. He is our friend.
I know. Our good friend would have worked. Hey, Jason, hey, Star Wars fans. We're all friends because we're all Star Wars fans. And that's what brings us all together each week for Rebel Force Radio. Matt Rashid joining us later in the show. Now, that's a name that's known to RFR patrons, as Jason said, because Matt is the guy who has probably hosted the most RFR Q&As. As a matter of fact, I know for a fact he is the one who has hosted the most RFR Q&As with me. RFR Q&As are hosted by RFR VIPs, and we have 80 episodes of RFR Q&A available right now at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio, and you can listen to each and every one of them just by being a member. You just get in on the lowest tier, RFR Insider, and that opens up the door to all that great programming. There's so much on our Patreon page. It's ridiculous, the amount of content we have there just for entering the door. But you can advance to higher tiers, get more content, get video, or even become a VIP. And you can host a RFR Q&A with me and maybe even sometimes Jason Swank. So Matt will be joining us also. You want to keep your ears open to that Clone Wars micro series review because we got a surprise planned for you, and you'll have to listen to find out what that surprise is. We're also going to take a look at that Lego Halloween special trailer that dropped this week. So that's coming up. Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales. I think we're going to fly through that wacky trailer and give you some thoughts and opinions. But first, with news headlines, yeah, Jason, we have some sad news.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news.
Come closer, I have good news.
Yeah, I was very, very shocked to read this. Actor Michael K. Williams found dead, and that was that just today or was that yesterday? I can't. When the story actually broke?
The story did break on Labor Day.
It was okay. So it was yesterday.
Monday.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. As we're recording the show, he was, I believe, 54 years old, and it looks, unfortunately, as though it is the result of a drug overdose, which is both frustrating and tragic, to say the least. But I got to admit, Jim, when I saw the name, I recognized because he was an actor that was more famous for a show called The Wire than anything else, I think, in his career. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, there was something Star Wars with this guy. And I open up this week's show log, and there it is. Mm-hmm. You're reminding all of us.
Yeah, for those not in the know, Mr. Williams was originally cast to be the antagonist in Solo, a Star Wars story. He was the original hire to play Drayden Voss, a role we all know went to Bettany.
Paul Bettany.
Paul Bettany. Why did I brain fart? Paul Bettany. But that's as a result of the production delays because Lord and Miller got fired. If you remember the directors of the Lego movie, Lord and Miller. Sonny with a case of meatballs, Lord and Miller. Sonny with a case of way over budget and over schedule, Lord and Miller.
Lego movie, Lord and Miller.
Yes, the Lego movie. So actor Michael K. Williams then could not be available for the reshoots, and that's why he was then replaced by Paul Bettany.
But he was not. But he was going to be a. I'm sorry. He was supposed to be either just a voice or was he a not? Was he? It's not stop motion. No, he's
mocap.
Mocap. He was a mocap.
I believe
character.
they were. Yeah. He was definitely on the set as the character of Drayden Voss, but that character was to be realized as CGI. Mm-hmm. So they were going to give him the Jar Jar Binks once over. But he was still there on the set with Alden Ehrenreich, being directed by Lord and Miller, and with the actress who played Kira and Chewie, and they were all there. They were all there with Michael K. Williams, and apparently they had good chemistry on the set. It was just a shame that he couldn't be available because he was shooting a movie in Africa, and he wasn't going to bail from that. I have some information, to be heard in Michael K. Williams' own voice. He appeared on the Jim and Sam show. Jim Norton and Sam Roberts. If you guys know Opie and Anthony, those guys were members of that show. Jim Norton, he's a pretty well-known stand-up comedian. I got to admit, I don't know too much about Sam Roberts, who was his co-host. I guess he was an intern on the old Opie and Anthony show like 15 years ago. But here's Michael K. Williams, and he appeared on the Jim and Sam show, and they asked him questions about his experience shooting the Solo film, and he gives us some information.
The character's name was Drayden Voss, and he was half mountain lion, half human. He was extremely sophisticated, very rich, he had been around the world, older guy. So we shot that, man, and then I rapped, and then I went on to Africa to shoot Red Sea Diving Resort, with Chris Evans and the whole gang out there. And then I get the phone call that 80% into the movie is only 20% left to shoot in the movie. Lucasfilms and the directors, the brothers who directed the infamous Legos movies, they didn't see eye to eye anymore and were fired. So they brought in Ron Howard, and they said, "Look, we want to. Can you steer the ship back in this direction, right? And how long would it take for you to do that?" He says, "Give me a few days to assess the damages, and I'll get back to you." When he got back, in regards to Michael K. Williams' character, if you want me to save it, we're going to have to reshoot it in its entirety.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he needed to be called back to do another movie, which was a movie he had already shot. So what a mess. What a mess.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I know there were some people that were doubting the reports that, that there was that much that needed to be reshot, but this confirms it. An entire character had to be essentially reinvented, recast, and not just, I mean, a major character. I mean, he's got a significant screen time, and it's just, wow. Yeah, a mess is right, no question.
So Michael K. Williams goes on to talk about the directors being fired and how that fallout then affected him.
Was definitely a difference in direction. In direction, the brothers from Legos film. I think they were taking the franchise in a different direction, and it was not working for Lucasfilms. So when it was about the end of the day with creative differences. So at the end of the day, they were asked to leave, and Ron Hart was brought in to steer it back a little in the opposite direction, more along the lines for Lucasfilms. And that's where the issue came in of my character needing to be reshot.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of different direction? From what I understand, he had the actors ad-libbing like crazy on the set and stuff. So Lord and Miller were largely ignoring the script written by Lawrence Kasdan and John Kasdan.
Yes, it's definitely possible. I mean, when you think about movies like the Will Ferrell films, Anchorman, the Austin Powers movies, they were famous for that improvisational style. Not to say they didn't have a script. They certainly had a script, but the script was just one version of what a scene how a scene might actually play, at least in terms of the dialogue. They weren't, I don't think they were changing plot lines with these things, but here's one riff you might go, and they would just keep rolling and keep rolling. I think it was Adam McKay, I think, that directed the Austin Powers films, but there's certain directors that work in that style, and there's certain movies and actors that play in that style. That would be and you know it when you see it. Like I say, think Anchorman. That would be a really bizarre vibe for a Star Wars movie, man. It would really feel weird.
Yeah, and I think it challenged the editors. It challenged everyone. I don't think you take the same approach to making a Star Wars film that you take making like an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm or something. This isn't a Larry David show. This is, you want to stick to the script. I think largely Lord and Miller had ad-libs flying all over the place, which were drastically then affecting the plot of the film. And so that's where the frustration came from. And that's why Michael K. Williams lost his role in a Star Wars film. So he explained he just couldn't do the reshoots.
Yeah.
There are certain things that I've been in Hollywood enough to know that anything could happen, right? And I've seen a lot of crazy shit. That was one for the textbooks. That was just so out of left field. There's just some things, Jim, you just got to say, you know what? It's out of my hands. It's out of my hands. That is like a freak accident. What are the odds that shit happened, right? So I accepted that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I was in Africa, and I just wasn't gonna do that.
So I guess the bottom line is he didn't even humor the idea of approaching the producers of the movie that he was working on.
Yeah.
He had moved on, Yeah. He wasn't going to try to, bend over backwards then to work on two films at the same time.
Well, you got to respect that, even though it's a Star Wars movie. I mean, these can be career making, sometimes career breaking, but they can be career making vehicles for you. And, the fact that he kind of took it in stride. At the end of the day, he made the right call. I mean, again, his life ended in tragedy. But if you look at it from a career standpoint, he probably made the right call. It's not like you would want to, this is not the movie that you'd want to risk your career on in retrospect. But
after developing such a great reputation as an actor in The Wire.
The other thing too, as he mentions, he's like, wow, this really came out of left field. When you're working on, small independent films, a lot can change. You got small budgets, you got, maybe flaky investors that kind of go in and out. But when you're making a movie like a Star Wars film, like you expect, you assume you're going to have nothing but consistency. Never in your wildest dreams, never in our wildest dreams, did we think that we would watch a Star Wars film get scrapped after having 80% of it in the can. That just doesn't happen with big blockbusters, and for good reason. It's very expensive to go to shoot the same movie 2 times, which is essentially what they ended up doing.
And they say, as a result, that could make Solo the most expensive film ever shot.
Wow.
Because they had to shoot it twice.
Yeah, and they won't release what those numbers are. I don't think they've ever released it.
And I would just kill to read a tell-all about the production of that film, but we know that's going to be near impossible because of the NDAs that have been signed and the career suicide it could be for someone to start talking.
Yeah.
But someday, somebody will have that story to tell, and it'll be fantastic. It'll just be somebody will talk anonymously to a journalist or a writer, and
maybe
that
Ron
story
Howard
will get out there.
You never know.
Yeah, maybe Ron Howard will tell the whole story about what happened as far as how he knows it. But Michael K. Williams could have been in a Star Wars film, sadly passed away recently due to suspected overdose in his Brooklyn penthouse. And that's a very sad thing to hear. Drug addiction is a terrible thing, and it just goes to show that it can catch up to you really fast. And if you're suffering from that kind of stuff, you have to go reach out and get some help.
Yeah.
Because it can easily destroy you like it did to a talented guy like Michael K. Williams. Sad story.
Yeah, very sad. Very sad. All right, switching gears here. Just one question, Jim. Are you afraid of the Darth?
Okay, good. Let's talk Lego Halloween. After that first story, we need to brighten things up here a little bit.
Yeah.
And for the rest of the show, it'll be a little bit more sun shining down on us as Star Wars fans. But yes, I am afraid of the Darth.
Well, it
wasn't
wasn't that long ago we were covering the press release, the announcement about this new Lego holiday special. Now, this is on the heels of the holiday special from last Christmas season. And now we've got the very first, and this is inarguably the very first Star Wars Halloween holiday special in the form of Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales. It's going to premiere beginning October 1st on Disney Plus, and very much the same creative crew and voice talent that gave us the holiday special from last year, which was enjoyable. It was fun. It was funny. Mm-hmm. The Lego brand of humor is definitely all throughout it. If it's not your cup of tea, I understand. But if it is, if you like the Lego stuff, if you like the Lego movies, if you like the Lego Batman, if you've liked all of my gosh, there's probably more Lego Star Wars content, I would assume, than there is any other sort of franchise within the Lego umbrella. But at any rate, we've got the very first trailer, so we're going to play it here. And I got to confess, I haven't watched it yet. True story. I've not watched this yet. So
I just glimpsed at it. All of the things that happen in this show happen after the events of The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
Much like the Star Wars Lego Holiday Special. And I find that it's really interesting that it's Lego to continue the story of the sequel trilogy. They're the ones who are going to expand on it. So what do we do with this sequel trilogy? I don't know. Just carry it on with the Legos.
Yeah,
who's making these calls? But yeah, this is going to be featuring Poe and BB-8. And they make an emergency landing on Mustafar, where they meet Grabala the Hutt, who has purchased Darth Vader's castle and is renovating it into the galaxy's first all-inclusive Sith-inspired luxury hotel.
Why not?
Well, you know what's incredible, though, is it's cheaper to stay there than it is at the Disney Star Wars hotel that's currently under construction. You could go to Mustafar and it's still cheaper there.
Dang.
So they have all kind of wacky things happen. Vader's servant, Vanee from the Rogue One, he's creeping around the place, and there's evil artifacts, and there's another character who is named Dean, who is Graballa the Huck's mechanic. Dean. Not a very Star Wars name, Dean. I think it's a good name for like dairy products. Dean. But no, it's a Star Wars. There was the original name for Luke Skywalker was Deke Starkiller.
Deke, that's right.
That would have been the character that eventually evolved into Luke Skywalker via George Lucas's evolving drafts of the original Star Wars. Deke. But no, they go with Dean. Dean. So, let's take a look at this wacky trailer and see what's going on with Lego Star Wars. Terrifying Tales.
Here we go.
I got a bad feeling about this.
There's the X-Wing crash landed on Mustafar.
Castle Vader, the galaxy's first all-inclusive luxury theme resort.
Graballa the Hutt.
Power of the dark side at the Empire.
Oh, so wait, Vader's still there? What is he like, the Mater D? He's the concierge?
He is not. He's actually like when you go to Chuck E. Cheese and you got the the Chuck E. Cheese band and they're animatronic. So this is a Vader. You're going to see him. He greets you.
Empire Emporium now open.
Oh, I see.
And then.
Oh, I see. Okay, it was a
screaming, not streaming this Halloween.
Tales almost.
That was BB-8 kind of like.
Would you like to hear them?
There's this Vanee guy who.
Was that lightning inside?
Oh, I thought that was Palpatine.
No, it's Vanee.
The legendary tales of the Sith speak of the thirst for power.
So no, join us then and take what you want.
Like
Knights of Ren.
Oh, Knights
with
of
Ren.
Yeah.
Devotion of the
with Ren himself.
Oh.
No Stimpy. Night Sisters.
Yep. Oh, we see another take on Darth Maul finally getting his legs. Oh, here's Luke.
Join the
back on Tatooine.
I will train you.
Oh yeah.
Oh, maybe
this
some
is all
what
over the
ifs
place.
Going on.
No.
Yeah, it sure looks that way.
Yeah.
This thing's all over the place.
So looks like maybe every story has a dark side.
So, what do you think?
A little on the nose is what I think.
Everyone gets scared, kid.
Oh, Zombie Greedo.
You can't have courage.
Poe wearing a skeleton suit.
So we're spanning all the whole saga. Terrifying Tales. Starting October 1st.
Here's B149611.
Well, that looks kind of fun.
Oh, like a little Shining reference. Like a Here's Johnny.
Right.
But, so it looks to me like there's going to be perhaps maybe 3 or 4 different kind of mini stories that are going to be perhaps told or narrated by this Vanee guy, perhaps. And they're going to sort of take the place of these kind of like what ifs. I mean, you're going to see, it looks like you're going to see Luke. What if Luke had enlisted in the Imperial Navy and ended up getting trained by Darth Vader? And then there looks to be sort of a reimagining of Darth Maul getting his droid legs by Mother Talzin and the Night Sisters, and there's some Vader Palpatine riffing going on. So
looks like fun. I thought I heard BB-8 do. Who's that guy on The Simpsons? He's the big bully. What's
Nelson?
his name? Nelson, yeah, and he has that laugh at. I heard BB-8 do a ha-ha like that. Yeah. There's something I saw in my last screening of The Rise of Skywalker that annoyed me about BB-8 is when Rey says she's leaving to go on the mission by herself, and they all surround her and say, "No, we're going with you. We stick together." When they say "we stick together," BB-8 rolls up and goes, "We stick together." It's like, oh, really?
Oh, I didn't. Boy, I'm sorry you pointed that out to me. Now I'm gonna. Oh wow, BB-8 is hooked on phonics now. Yeah. I was just watching Curious George this morning with my son, and that's what he does. You're like, "Hello, George." He's like, it's.
I love Curious George. Can I just say, I mean, this isn't really the format to talk about a little animated monkey and a guy in a yellow suit, but ever since I was a little kid, I've just always really enjoyed Curious George. And when my kids were little, I took them to see that film.
Oh,
It's got that Jack Johnson soundtrack.
Yes,
it
does.
It's just a great soundtrack, and it's just real. The whole thing is just warm and cuddly, just like Curious George himself. The whole production just it's very, very chill.
Yeah,
extremely chill.
Yeah.
So so we are George heads here. We love, we're Curious fans, and definitely. Recommend that to young parents and young at heart.
So I know what people are wondering, Jim. You know what people are wondering. Rebel Force Radio listeners are wondering. Hey, we got a new Star Wars thing streaming on Disney Plus on October 1st. Are we going to get together and chat about it?
No. We don't do the Lego shows, but we'll probably review it on the following week here on RFR. So.
There will be no terrifying tales after show, but yeah, as you say, we'll definitely be covering it on here because these things. What's the point in really discussing them because they're not really they're not real. They're what ifs. But with that, I got to tell you, with that Marvel animated series on Disney Plus, the What If series, it does, and they've done this obviously in Star Wars through comic books, very famously. I wouldn't mind an animated What If series, to tell you the truth. I mean, just be kind of fun to see some of those stories told, like that.
Well, we'll see how popular and successful the Marvel one is, and you never know.
You never know.
They might borrow a little bit. But also on the Disney Plus front, there is word out there that there's going to be a series showing up this fall about the sounds of Star Wars. Could be a multi-part little series that features Ben Burt talking about the birth of the lightsaber sound and R2-D2 and all of that stuff. That's my take on it. I think the information about this stuff is slowly emerging, so I don't know really much about it.
Is it leaking?
No,
not
leaking.
Okay,
not leaking. No, it was part of a Disney programming list. How they reveal things that are going to be coming up in future months on the service, and that title was in there. Sounds of Star Wars, or Star Wars Sound, or a Galaxy of Sounds, or something like that. Right. I forget what it was referred to as, but that might be something to keep your eyes open for as well, coming this fall. And we'll of course review it here on Rebel Force Radio, just like we always review Star Wars and pop culture.
Rebel Force Radio.
You've already made that Star Wars reference.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars parody!
All right. We're back. More Star Wars and pop culture. We had a heaping helping last week on the show, so let's keep it going. What do we got this week?
Yeah, I put the call out. I said, hey, you guys, let us know, because we can't see everything all the time. And we have a few good answers here to our call for Star Wars and pop culture content. Alexander Gates emailed us, show@rebelforceradio.com, and said there was a pop culture reference in last week's Supergirl, the episode Welcome Back Kara. During a discussion about not wanting to see Phantoms again, there's a lighthearted prequel jab. Phantoms, prequels? Could it be an episode 1 put down in here? Could it be? Well, let's listen to Supergirl's recent Star Wars reference.
Oh, I don't think I ever want to hear the word phantom ever again. Not in an opera, Not in a Star Wars prequel, especially not in a Star Wars prequel. I don't even think I could handle an episode of Scooby-Doo right now.
Light-hearted prequel jab.
Like the movie itself, that title has grown on me, and I think it is such a fitting description of Palpatine.
Yeah, yeah. It fell flat. The title, The Phantom Menace, it fell flat on me when it was originally announced. I get it. It's pulpy and everything. It just kind of seemed like The Phantom Menace. It just didn't, I don't know. Maybe it's the word menace. I felt like that's kind of a
well for me it was Phantom because it seemed a very earthy. It seemed like a very earthy word, you know, like they they don't call him. Well, they do. They do say robot at one point in A New Hope, but you know, like they use droid instead of android or robot. You would think that they would have a different word for Phantom. It just felt very, I don't know.
Well, what does Phantom mean?
Spectre. Ghost.
Yeah, but it's not really. It's you know, something elusive is what I'm thinking, you know.
Something elsewhere. The elsewhere menace.
Elusive menace. Elusive. But yes, you know, the Phantom. Yeah, you don't see. And so I wasn't really thinking the ghost aspect as much. I was thinking, you know, it's Palpatine, obviously. He is the Phantom Menace. He's pulling all the strings, and nobody realizes it's happening. It's elsewhere. Elusive.
I think it could be called the elusive nuisance.
The elusive nuisance. The elusive menace.
The alternate title.
I thought Balance of the Force would be a perfect title for it, but I mean that was in retrospect after actually seeing the film. I thought it would be called while they were shooting it, it was called The Beginning. The Beginning.
That's kind of a cool title.
Yeah. I guess the Phantom Menace is just fine. So you know, it doesn't bother me. I just don't know why Supergirl has such a hang up about it, because when that film came out, she was probably young. And what I've learned over the years is that the fans who were kids when the Phantom Menace came out, they're the ones who like it the most. It's usually the fans more like our age.
Yeah, you know, it's not
who
Supergirl.
Have the real hang-ups.
It's the guys writing Supergirl.
Yeah,
That's
right.
Those are the ones with the hang-ups.
Right, they're not writing dialogue for Supergirl. They're writing dialogue for themselves. That's them speaking. That's not Supergirl. We know Supergirl would never say that.
Yeah, she would. But when Phantom Menace came out, she was on that ship, you know, careening towards Earth or something, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Do you think there was like a TV in there where she could like stream it?
Oh, maybe. You know, they probably set her up because that's a long voyage from Krypton. I would guess. Yeah,
you need some SpongeBob going.
Yeah, you gotta be binging pretty heavy on that. Does it take 100 years to get to Earth from Krypton?
I wouldn't bet on it because I don't know. But what I would bet on are horse races. And so I want everyone to place their bets right now because we're going to the track.
Oh, Jimmy puts money on the ponies.
That's right. On the ponies. Star Wars and Pop Culture is going to take you to the horse racing track. This is courtesy of Brian Walters in the Rebel Force Radio Facebook group. He's taken us to the Saratoga Race Course, a thoroughbred horse racing track located in Sarasota Springs, New York, opening in 1863. Oh, it's old. Fourth oldest racetrack in the U.S. And why are we going there? Why are we betting our life savings on a certain horse? Well, we're going to find out. So let's, Jason. Oh, Jason's got the binoculars out already, so he's ready for the race to begin. I see the horses are coming up to the gate. So let's turn things over to the Saratoga Race Course and listen closely for this Star Wars reference.
Go upstairs to John Imbrial. There in the gate. And they're off. Staying out late from the extreme outside is going for the early lead. And Baby Yoda is alongside in second. Ducal is the leader here by 3/4 of a length. Baby Yoda on the outside in second. Now it's a half dozen lengths back to Olympiad, who's running in third. Here is Baby Yoda on the outside now to take over the lead as Ducal drops back. It is Baby Yoda in front. And Olympiad is now moving into second, and Ducal is third. It is Baby Yoda with a big effort here. Woo! Baby Yoda and Jose Ortiz, they won by better than 4 lengths, and they ran the 6.5 furlongs in 1:14.1.
Yeah! Wow. Baby Yoda bringing it home at the Saratoga. I love it.
I won big on that one.
Yeah. You don't think he was the favorite?
He was for me.
My God.
Because the force was with him.
I would never bet against Baby Yoda. Not in a horse race. He could do his baby hand thing.
Do you think he was doing that while the race was going on?
Yeah.
Baby Yoda is now a champion.
Wow.
A thoroughbred champion. And we were there for it and made a lot of money watching that race. Thank you very much, Brian Walters. Thank you, Alexander Gates. Thank you, everyone who sends us Star Wars and pop culture suggestions. If you see something on a TV show, movie, talk show, whatever, news broadcast, or even a horse race that makes you think of Star Wars, that's a direct reference to Star Wars. We're looking for audio only, too, by the way. I'm getting a lot of people are telling me about a show where there's a poster of Darth Vader in the back walls. It doesn't do anything for me unless they talk about the poster.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at that Darth Vader poster. That's what we need. This is an audio format. So we need audio pop culture references. We love all of you guys who make the suggestions. Show at rebelforceradio.com, and maybe you'll hear your pop culture reference here on Star Wars and Pop Culture.
All right, for those of you who are Patreon supporters and have been listening over the last several years to the exclusive podcast, the Q&A, this type of conversation we're about to get into is going to be nothing new to you.
That's right, Jason. Patreon RFR supporters are really familiar with the RFR Q&A. It's our exclusive podcast on Patreon, and it's hosted by RFR patrons. So they lead the discussion every week. And the very first guy to ever take advantage of the Q&A is RFR VIP Matt Rashid. How's it going, Matt?
I am good, guys. How are you? Thank you so much for having me. I've been listening to you guys since you were a podcast. Now you're a show.
Yes,
I'm thrilled.
Since we were just a pod. We weren't even a
just a little
podcast.
pod. Now you're a show. And I am just thrilled, guys, in all honesty.
Oh.
Well, I'll tell you why we have Matt here with us, ladies and gentlemen, is because being the very first VIP to take advantage of the RFR Q&A, Matt is also the guy who has hosted the most number of Q&As at this point. We have 80 episodes of RFR Q&A currently available. Matt, how many episodes have you hosted?
80.
80, all 80 of them.
Well, I know that's not true because I've done a whole one of them, so I know. And you weren't on the one
all
with
right,
me.
79.
Yeah,
I Zoom bombed that one. No, I don't know. God, probably at least around 10, maybe. Is that?
I'm thinking a dozen.
I mean, maybe a dozen. Okay, yeah.
At least. And the way the RFR Q&A works is RFR VIPs contact me and they say, "Hey, Jimmy Mac, let's do an RFR Q&A about this or that, or I have some trivia to throw at you or some games to play." And Matt reached out and said, we really need to have an in-depth discussion about the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars microseries. How does that sound for an RFR Q&A? And I was thinking, wow, this is great timing because the microseries dropped on Disney Plus just a few months ago. And so now they're accessible to everyone. For the longest time, they were on hard-to-find DVD. Maybe it was on YouTube, but the quality wasn't that good. But now it's in high quality on Disney Plus, and I thought it was a perfect time to go back, revisit that series, and bring Matt into the discussion here on the weekly RFR. It was a topic that was too big to contain on the Q&A. So Matt Rashid is now with us on Rebel Force Radio, and we're going to talk about the Clone Wars microseries. It was on Cartoon Network. They were 3 to 5 minute long episodes that were dropping in the years between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, so early 2000s. I think 2002, 2003.
2003, I believe.
I think they were on once a week, or maybe I can't remember how they dropped, but I remember watching them with my boys and recording them on VHS. And we would watch these little short episodes over and over and over again. But then when they all got put together in single seasons, they dropped on disc, and you could watch them almost as if they were a Star Wars animated feature.
Yeah, no, it's true. And, it was all we had. This was in between episodes 2 and 3, right?
Yeah.
So we had just wrapped up Attack of the Clones, which ends with the start of the Clone Wars. And it was really kind of a blank slate, if you guys recall at the time. We didn't really know. We knew what episode 3 was going to kind of in general entail, but we didn't know how they were going to handle the Clone Wars. We didn't really know what the Clone Wars looked like. It was very much a blank slate at that time. We didn't have any other series. We certainly didn't have any Dave Filoni series. That's all we had. We had the original trilogy in episodes 1 and 2. And so, watching it really brought me back had to rewind a lot of tape in my head as to where we were when this was airing. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to turn it over to you guys for a second, Jason, just to ask you, when you were rewatching it, what was coming back to you that you hadn't thought of, or assumptions that you had made since the Dave Filoni series has been our main show now? Is there anything that came back to you or that struck you as you were watching this that was either an incorrect first impression or something that stuck with us all these years and we didn't even know that the Clone Wars, the Genndy Clone Wars, had laid that out for us?
Well, the thing that struck me, particularly about the first part, because you have the original 23-minute shorts, and then you had, I think, then the 12-minute shorts as sort of part 2. What struck me about part 1 is that really, like you said, Matt, like the only thing that we really had to go on, and the only thing that Genndy and George and everybody had to go on was what we had already seen in the Battle of Geonosis. And what surprised me was how little of that particular, when we look at separatist tech, how little of it carried over into Revenge of the Sith and then in the Clone Wars series. The tech is very, very different, I find, other than, clearly you're dealing with the banking clan and you're dealing with who are the guys with the the Techno Union. Yeah, you can say the Techno Union. Yeah, right. But as far as like the spider droids on Ilum and and other things that we saw, it didn't carry over. And then the big kind of elephant in the room is this Durge guy who was clearly kind of a prototype in a way, I think, of Grievous. And I find him very George. When I was watching it, and how Obi-Wan disposes of him at the end, I just thought that was just weird, wacky, pure George Lucas. Unfettered. So I guess the big things that going back and looking at it, how little of it stuck and bled into the Clone Wars proper series, and just how kind of wacky and George it is. Oh, and how little personality in the clones. That was a big shock going back. There was zero personality with the clones. So they felt almost more like droids.
I'm glad that you pointed that out, because I wrote that down in my notes too, of how they're pretty they're faceless at this point. I don't even think we see one shot of them putting a helmet on in the second volume. But yes, very much literally clones. Essentially, we didn't even know what the clones were going to be. Remember, we all thought they were stormtroopers, that this was the birth of the stormtroopers. So we didn't really know much about them. Yes, they are not yet with the personalities that we've come to enjoy in the later series. Jimmy, what did you think? What stood out to you when you were watching it again?
Well, the biggest thing is just how menacing Grievous is in the second season, where he really, at the end of the first season too, he just lacks that. He's more of a coward, I guess I would say. He's not as scary in Revenge of the Sith as I think he is in this. He lacks the menacing quality. He's still menacing in Revenge of the Sith, but there's just something so wicked about him in the Clone Wars. Maybe it has something to do with the voice. Or
no,
just
he
the
acts
stealthy.
Differently.
He's stealthier.
He's like Batman.
The Clone Wars.
He's like Batman.
Just kind of sneaks up.
He's just all over them. He sneaks up. He's next, he's behind them. He's in front of them. He's, just kind of all over the place.
Not even the same character. I don't think, other than the design. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
I mean, the only connective tissue is I was noticing. Oh, he doesn't even have the cough, and then they gave him the cough at the end of Volume 2.
Mace Windu,
they give. Was it Mace that gave it to him? That like force chest choked him or something, or
squeezed him.
Did something. Yeah, he squeezed his little heart. And
his gut sack.
He starts just the gut sack, and then he's like the Grinch. Is like his little heart is too small now.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, no, he's definitely. I remember seeing a Revenge of the Sith and being like, "This is not the same guy."
No, and I think Jim hit it on the head. The voice is different, and I guess you could probably retcon that and maybe suggest that the Mace Windu, squeeze not only gave him the cough, but then kind of gave him a more labored voice. But he was, instead of his design being built to be such an incredible fighter, in Revenge of the Sith, it was almost like he was built that way to run away, to be able to escape. The way a spider does, it kind of collapses and gets through little corners and crevices.
You get out of there.
Yeah, whereas this, it was like he was built and made to just kick ass.
Yeah, even some of the way he uses his droid body is less, like you're saying in the movie, is about escape. Yeah. And in this one, you really see how it's a compensation for lack of force powers. I mean, he can just do things that with with his automation that really makes him more than an equal. I mean, it makes Ki-Adi-Mundi take off his shirt.
Everybody's getting shirtless in this series. You notice that?
He's all crazy. He's all crazy at the top of season 2. He's like, "We gotta get him," and the clones are holding him back, and he's like,
"Oh, and I love Jedi Shaggy with the little beard, with the stubble on the beard is." Zoinks! Scoob! I'm gonna go running after this guy. Yeah, he's like sweating. He can't handle it. You don't want to be in a foxhole with that guy, man.
No, the guy would just runs up. They're like, "Everybody, stay cool." And he's like, "Gah!"
Yeah.
Well, you have to imagine though that may have been overwhelming for Jedi at that time, because while they were involved in a lot of missions and action and stuff, just throwing the Jedi into a war probably had some really strong effects on them in certain ways where, they were losing their cool. It's just like putting anyone in a war situation, sometimes you snap. And Grievous brought it out of Shaggy. Okay. He really needed Scooby there with him, and the Mystery Machine for that matter.
Yeah. I didn't, in Revenge of the Sith, I didn't get the cause for the PTSD that they all suffered in the Clone Wars in this series. Just judging by the way he was. And granted, he was against Anakin and Obi-Wan, but still, it was a little bit jarring to see what he did to those poor psyches.
Matt, you said you tried to put yourself in the frame of mind that we were in when this series dropped between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. I think this series revealed a lot of things that I thought for sure were going to be revealed in Revenge of the Sith. I thought we would see more of the Clone Wars in Revenge of the Sith.
Yep.
I thought we would see things like Anakin becoming a Jedi Knight in Revenge of the Sith, but it happens here in the Clone Wars micro series.
Yeah.
C-3PO getting his gold plating, I thought we'd see in Revenge of the Sith, but we see it here in the Clone Wars. Yeah. So it's just... it fills in the gaps. I really thought we would just see much more of the actual Clone Wars in Revenge of the Sith as opposed to just the end of it. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what appealed to George when they made this show, was that it would be an opportunity to fill in those gaps. And so he turned it over to Genndy. But as we all know, then George decided to continue it on his own without Genndy Tartakovsky's assistance or anything like that. I believe Tartakovsky was under the impression that he was going to be the guy in charge of Lucas Animation, bringing Star Wars, animated Star Wars to TV for some time to come in the future. But what I really think happened was this series was so good that Lucas saw the potential in telling Clone Wars stories and decided to really dive into it and make his own Clone Wars. Because I think George was mostly hands-off with this series, just judging from some sound bites we're going to play here in just a few minutes. But I think he was largely hands-off. The only thing I could really find that was George's contribution to this series was just inserting General Grievous into the mix.
What about some of the kind of more canon content? Did he have stuff to do with that? Do you know, or do you?
Well, I'm sure they sent him a checklist of things. Can we do this? Mm-hmm. Can we do that? Can we give 3PO the gold plating?
Right.
Or are you going to, I'm sure they had to fly everything up the flagpole, and he would sit there at his desk and check off yes or no on a bunch of questions.
I'm surprised by this. I would have thought that he, just based on what I was seeing, that he would have had a heavier hand in this. But that Jim, you say he's on record. Genndy's on record as saying that wasn't the case. He didn't work with George very much, because I would think that some of those story beats George would have given to Genndy as, here are things that we want to cover. Now, keeping in mind that Revenge of the Sith would have been in front of cameras in 2003 when this animated series would have debuted. So principal photography on Sith would have been when these came about. So you back up, you figure, I don't know how long it takes to do a 2D series like this. So when these would have actually been produced, I'm just trying to place it within where George was. So, I mean, it's likely he had a pretty good handle on what the script was going to be. So I wonder if it was, if he did see it as a tool to sort of tell some of those little things that he knew he wasn't going to be able to get to in the final film. If you remember, he talked pretty famously about how he had so much story left by the time he got to Revenge of the Sith. He couldn't get it all. He talked about that a lot when the bonus scenes came out on the DVD and stuff. So, but at the same time, what you're describing seems very much more George's style, which is, tell me what you want to do and I'll tell you what's okay and what's not,
Right.
Yeah, that's how he approached publishing and some of the other endeavors.
Well, George was up to his neck in creating Revenge of the Sith at this time, so he didn't really have the flexibility to be working so much on the animated series. So out of necessity, he almost had to turn it over to Genndy. What can you do, kid? And then, like we say, Genndy gives him the scripts. He gives, George writes yes, no, yes, no.
Well, what about a character like Durge? Has there been, I don't know if it's been talked about, if that was a George. It felt very George to me, like what George would do if he was making an animated series, stretching those boundaries and, everything from the slime that was, left on Obi-Wan. I mean, I could see George's sense of humor really liking that.
He's slimy.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When he gets out, he's also, but I can't get over the comparisons between Durge and Grievous. I don't know. It just seems
they were definitely the boss fights of the two series, And the interesting thing about Durge is that he shows up in the Clone Wars comic series.
There you go.
Dark Horse was doing. And I remember being struck by that crossover. And I don't know, Jimmy, maybe you know which came first, if they one picked up from the other, because I came to the comic series late, and I don't remember the order in which I saw and read the stuff. But
It was like simultaneous. I thought it was around simultaneous. Yeah. Yeah, it was in early 2003, I want to say, when we started seeing Durge in issues of Dark Horse comic series like Star Wars Republic. Durge was in that. And yeah, it's quite possible he was initially developed as part of the Dark Horse comic series and then shared with the Genndy team. At one point, we asked Filoni about bringing back Durge into George's Clone Wars. And he kind of tap danced around that a little bit, but he gave us an answer.
It's a stupid character. We didn't like him.
Well, you never know. It might happen. Yeah. I was looking him up and just to see if there were details about where, when exactly he came about. But he seems to have, he's had some origins that's similar to Grievous, a warrior that ended up leading, the battle droids in the Clone Wars battles. The other thing that where I think the series really do sort of congeal nicely is the format in terms of sort of like Battle of the Week or Battle of the Arc. Yeah. We're going to look at this planet and this skirmish for a couple of episodes. And I also found that the Band of Brothers comment has its origin with Genndy, not with Filoni. Not with Filoni talking about Band of Brothers. Now, Filoni may have continued that as an ideal and talked about, I know he talked about it in interviews, but it seems to have originated with Genndy's vision of this series.
Yeah, it's definitely one of there are several things that I find are set up in even the first season. One of them being the Band of Brothers, the idea that the Jedi are at the head of every army on different planets with different campaigns that we can visit every week. You've got Kit Fisto with his, General Aquaman, and, just being able to go to different worlds and do different things and zoom in. You even have the beginning of the specialized troopers, ARC troopers, which I don't think we had seen yet. But the format, you're right, Jason, is, very similar to Forces of Destiny in that short, compact, adventure of the week.
Yeah, except this one was good.
Yeah,
that's the big difference.
It wasn't made by white slavers. That's why.
I have confirmed. Well, I shouldn't say I've confirmed. I've confirmed the report. There's a report that exists that claims that Durge was designed at Skywalker Ranch and specifically for the Genndy series as a bounty hunter. He was going to be a new memorable bounty hunter. And then it sounds like he did then cross over into the comic books. In fact, there's even a battle at one point between Grievous and Durge.
There is. I don't remember that. I don't know. In the comic books.
The Clone Wars era, it was all considered to be like a multimedia project with book tie-ins, comic tie-ins, and the micro series. It was an effort to tell these Clone Wars stories. At the time, nobody realized that George Lucas was going to go on to create a 7-season epic show that was, breaking all the rules when it came to the technology of animation, and really made this thing kind of look pale in comparison. But it really isn't. I mean, I find the animation in this show to be super dynamic, and I have a clip here of George Lucas talking about the appeal of Genndy's style when mashed up with the Clone Wars.
Roll it, Jimmy.
Thing that attracted me to it has a slight anime feel to it, and I'm very interested in anime, and I was really interested in moving into a kind of animation that was very different from anything we'd done in the past. And Genndy is very good at bridging that transition between traditional animation and anime.
You definitely see that, especially when Obi-Wan lends or gives a killing, we think is the killing blow to Durge. Very Kurosawa. That frozen still moment, silence, which is, anime picked up on that style. You can really see that, and that's not something we get in
where
the
it builds
Clone
the
Wars stuff.
tension. It builds the tension through, like you say, those pauses in the action, the virtually no soundtrack, very little or very minimalist soundtrack. So very much
very different from the style of the Filoni series, which was more cinematic, like Western cinematic, you might say.
For sure.
Speak for a moment. We have to address the fact that this introduces, as far as I know she was in the comics too, but Asajj Ventress.
Yes.
Very much, I think, intact as we know her in later on in the Filoni series. Thoughts?
Loved her. I loved her. I actually remember loving her from the beginning when I first saw her. I thought that this sort of goth witch-like Jedi, female Jedi was very cool. She did. I will say they kicked it up a notch with the Filoni series. I thought that the version that we get of her later is a lot more, I hate to say realistic, but a little bit more three-dimensional. Yeah, a little more nuanced, not quite so cartoony, which, again, we're talking about an animated series, but I mean, there is something to be said how sort of the characterizations, because of the time limits they were dealing with, they couldn't be subtle. You couldn't create a lot of subtlety with this.
It's broad strokes, a lot of broad strokes.
And so it was like, oh yes, she was a witch in every sense of the word, and every line of dialogue, which was very few, had to convey that. So, but this version of Ventress did, I think, set the stage very well for the Ventress that we later got. If anything, it was certainly an improvement later on. I guess the only thing that I guess I sort of struggle a little bit with the canonicity, of it, and Anakin's scar
of the series in general, or
I mean, more with Asajj. I got to tell you though, that battle on Yavin with her and Anakin, I'll say I don't know that there was any lightsaber battle quite like it, even in the Filoni series. Not because clearly the animation and the technology was better in the Filoni series, but the jungle, the rain, again, the suspense that was created. You had these moments to breathe where they're just staring each other down. I don't remember seeing anything like that in the Filoni series. I loved that.
Again, very, very Kurosawa samurai fight, those mental battles, with just the sound, as you said, Jason, of the rain on the lightsaber sizzling.
Yeah. Well, I just love the detail of the raindrops hitting the saber and the sizzle.
Yeah.
That's something I would have loved to see in a live action film. As far as Asajj Ventress goes, as soon as she appeared on screen, I recognized her as a variation of Ian McCaig concept art for a Sith witch that he created for the Phantom Menace.
That's right.
I remember from the old books, the Art of the Phantom Menace, etc. And there was a Sith witch in there. And so I was like, wow, they're bringing in the Sith witch. The concept that Ian came up with, though, was more literally taken to create Mother Talzin, another one of the Night Sisters. But Asajj is definitely a variant of that artwork, or inspired by that artwork originally by Ian McCaig.
Was there one, I can't remember, was there one where she is literally bald? Because I do remember the one that had like the terrifying hair, and George was like, no, that's too scary. So was it her without the hair, or was there a version where she looks like Asajj as we know her? I can't remember.
There's a version of concept art of the Sith witch that looks just exactly like Mother Talzin.
Exactly like her, right? Because there was the Mother Talzin. Yes.
Yeah. So that
I remember
was
that with the flowing red, kind of clothes that are the red hood and everything. Yeah. Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, but my initial thoughts about Ventress was that she was taken from those ideas, that's how they came up with the whole concept for her. And then, of course, as you said, then Ventress gets her introduction in this show, as does Grievous, as does, well, not really Captain Rex, but a character named Alpha, clone trooper. He was an ARC trooper, Alpha. And he was featured heavily in the Dark Horse comics as well. And George adapted him into the Clone Wars and essentially turned him into Captain Rex when it was all said and done. Yeah. But Alpha. Mm-hmm.
I was missing that. I did miss the personalization of the clones, which was a new thing. It struck me when I saw it in the Filoni series, especially the one with the episode with Yoda, which really kind of lays the groundwork for that. I was missing that in this series.
You were missing it, but it hadn't even been developed yet. I mean,
no, I mean just the second time round. The first time round, back in the day, didn't they were clones. They were just soldiers, faceless, dispensable. I really wasn't that into them. And I remember when one of the back in the Forcecast days, somebody was saying that they were maybe their kid, maybe it was you, Jimmy, I don't know, but somebody was saying their kid was like a big fan of the clones. And I'm like, big fan of the clones? Okay. And it wasn't until you kind of go back and see the Filoni Clone Wars more that you're like, these are real. These are real characters who became three-dimensional, and we cared about, and it was set up by that episode with Yoda on, when they're facing off with Asajj.
Ambush.
And ambush. That's the one. But that is something that I'm glad that they added eventually.
Totally. Well, at first I had trouble with it because I wanted the clones to be all automatons and just, as they are presented in Attack of the Clones, they are obedient almost to a fault, My theory about that is as the Clone Wars continued, their constant connection to the Jedi, being around the Jedi all the time, sort of helped the Force manifest in the clones, and that's how they develop their individuality. That's just kind of an approach I've taken to explain it to myself.
I mean, certainly they're being treated by the Jedi as individuals and people and given, treated with respect. And that had to bring out something because the clones, and I don't remember if it was just my impression or if this is actually something that, is explicit in the Filoni series, that are kind of shocked that they're like, I'm a person, like you care, yeah, we care. Yeah, we care. You are a person.
I think that's a Jedi. We talked a little bit about this on the show recently. I think that it's a hallmark of the Jedi philosophy, certainly that of the living Force. I mean, Qui-Gon extolled that idea that all life forms had something special to offer, even Jar Jar Binks, and so that seems to be, I think, something maybe not entirely unique, but certainly a hallmark of the Jedi. And so they would, in the same way that they would see, all of the creatures that are, derived of the Force or carry the Force or part of the Force would have some special meaning and some special value. Whereas, the bureaucrats are the ones that are going to look at these guys like they're just, disposable.
Yeah, and it's nice to give the Jedi
I'm sorry.
credit.
One other thing, Matt. I would just above all, the Kaminoans. I see no evidence outside of what we're seeing a little bit with Omega and Lama Su, or is it Nala Se? I get them mixed up. But
Lama Su Mamakusa.
Exactly. I see outside of that relationship, I see no evidence that the Kaminoans see the clones as anything other than disposable objects.
No, they're a product. I agree with you totally. They're a commodity that is what makes them special.
So they're raised with that idea.
Yeah. Very good point. Just wanted to. You brought up Qui-Gon Jinn, and before I don't want to lose that. because he's brought up in the second season, and I wish they had lingered on this a little bit more also in Revenge of the Sith. How there's that Anakin has that dream in the beginning, in his introduction in season 2 with Qui-Gon, and there's a moment where he lashes out at Obi-Wan and says, "Well, you're no Qui-Gon Jinn," and that it was like, that stings, and they both are like, "I'm sorry, man, let's hug it out," and they're like, "I miss him too," and I just think that it was. I feel like there's definitely a slightly different format in the second season as compared to the first. I'd like to hear your guys' opinions on that. But just to talk first for a second about Qui-Gon, and if that stood out to either of you, that he kind of had a little bit of a prominence that we never quite got, except for that moment with Yoda at the end of Revenge of the Sith. So
he's the forgotten Jedi.
Jimmy, who wants to take that?
He's the forgotten Jedi. I think in the sequels, I think that it's odd to me because Obi-Wan was such a looming presence throughout the original trilogy, that I just assumed, George being a guy that works in archetypes, that Qui-Gon is going to be the Obi-Wan Kenobi of this trilogy, and that he'll pop up and be, sort of guiding things along. Present. And I was just so surprised with each subsequent film that, where was Qui-Gon? And that still sticks out to me as a really odd story choice by George. There are so many little things. I shouldn't even say little things. There's so many things where I go, geez, did George just forget about that?
Yeah, right.
Did he rewatch the last movie before he started writing the next one?
Oh God, there's a Qui-Gon. Jesus H.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah. I mean, and then, but what I think you come away with, and this is what I think is so different between what George left out of his prequel trilogy and what Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams left out of the sequel trilogy, is that you can see when you watch it what George's focus was. George's focus was Anakin Skywalker. It wasn't Qui-Gon Jinn. It wasn't Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn. It was Anakin Skywalker becoming Darth Vader, a laser focus on the story. I don't think you can make that, make a case for that kind of laser focused story vision with the sequel trilogy. So I'm willing to forgive those things that were left out, because I go, all right, in George's mind, me as a fan, I wanted to see more of that, but it wasn't really integral to this story that George was trying to tell. But
you got it nonetheless.
But I do think this is a great moment, because it does sort of solidify, if you want to see it happen in front of you, that Anakin does feel that he really lost something when Qui-Gon went, and that perhaps you could almost see him thinking that things might have turned out differently had Qui-Gon survived, and that's always in the back of his mind.
Yeah. Yes. Or he feels like maybe his training is legitimately substandard with Obi-Wan calling the shots. He realized, Qui-Gon would have done it so much better. So when he lashes out at Obi-Wan, I think there's a lot of heartfelt truthness to that reaction, where he says, you're no Qui-Gon Jinn. And he only apologizes because he knows what Qui-Gon meant to Obi-Wan. Not as much as that he's upset that he insulted Obi-Wan, but it's just that he brought up somebody very special to Obi-Wan and weaponized that relationship to hurt Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think, that's why I feel like Anakin then apologized almost immediately after saying that. But I think there's a lot of truth in his statement. I don't think he didn't mean it. He just didn't mean to say it.
Yeah, I think, and I think Obi-Wan gets it too when his response. He's like, I understand. I miss him too. It hurts. I didn't. The interesting thing. And George comes up with these ideas, sometimes I think inadvertently, and I wish he would lean into it more. But I think Jason, like you pointed out, he gets kind of focused on one thing. Anakin's connection in Phantom Menace is with Qui-Gon. And by the end of it, I remember thinking, okay, he's gonna be under the tutelage of Obi-Wan now, which we all want as fans and the audience.
Yep.
But he doesn't know this guy, and all we've seen of him is he's kind of a jerk about him.
But then you bring up a good point, Matt. Why were we so excited in the theater in episode 1 at the end when he says, "Your apprentice, Skywalker, will be"? We're like,
because that's the way it is.
That was the prophecy. And it's like, wait a minute. He completely screws the pooch with Anakin. I mean, we know this. So we're like, we're rooting for the story to go along, and I know what we were rooting for.
We were rooting for some prequel.
Yeah. Well, we were rooting for
the curse of a prequel. Yeah.
Yeah, we were like, oh, now we're going to get the swashbuckling adventures of Obi and Anakin in the next movie. So I think that's what we were, pumped up for. But yeah, it is kind of funny. We were excited. It's like, you might as well have said, "Sealed, your fate is now." Like, no hope have you now, right?
Well, but you know what? Yoda does insert a lot of uncertainty.
Are you now?
Yeah.
Yoda he does voice his concerns, which is something I don't think I was necessarily expecting. For Anakin Skywalker to be accepted into the ranks of a Jedi, but reluctantly so. Mm-hmm. And that's on display throughout the entire prequel series. As long as we're talking about season 2, we have this clip of Lucas and Tartakovsky talking about how this season will lead right up to the beginning of Revenge of the Sith.
The second group of episodes in the animated series leads right up to the events that happen in the film. So we get a little background on what was going on right before episode 3.
Ideally, what we'd love to see is like an hour edit of the chapters, the next 5, be shown in the movie theater right before the third movie, just to see how it feels, because it really does link up.
Sets up beautifully, and I got to tell you, I was so surprised. Before I went back and watched these, I thought there was an hour of content. I thought there was about 30 minutes of season 1 and 30 minutes of season 2. Couldn't believe that it was over 2 hours.
I felt the same way,
totally
Jason, especially at crunch time when I'm like, oh, I got to fit this in today. I'm like, that's a long time.
Yeah, but the fact that there's a whole other Star Wars movie here to watch.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was. And season 2 or volume 2 as we knew it, the really is about setting up Revenge of the Sith. There's like, that is the ramp up. That is the what we're building towards in season 2. Different format, a little bit more long form, longer episodes. Jason, I think you said what were they? 12 minutes?
They were 12 minutes. They were 12 minutes.
Yeah.
And I want to just go back real quick on something that Jimmy said, because it's no small thing, is that we were supposed to be, as fans, experiencing the Clone Wars in real time. Three years between films, and so all of, much like Shadows of the Empire, which was obviously a much smaller story, but I think they learned from that, and the idea was that there would be comics and there would be novels, there would be this series that would tell you what was happening sort of off camera, on camera, during the Clone Wars in real time. So the Clone Wars were supposed to be taking place over the span of about 3 years. And then this was like, the cherry on top, where he's like, I'm going to give you an hour that's going to lead right into Revenge of the Sith. And I think this came out in April, and then the film came out in May. I remember it being pretty close.
I remember being close, too. I don't remember the exact dates, but Jason, I do remember it being close. Yeah, even the camera panning. Doesn't it pan up out of the space battle?
Yeah. It's a reverse of the first shot in Revenge of the Sith, yeah.
Oh, I didn't pick that up. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it pulls out through the space battle so that we can kind of pull back in again at the top of Revenge of the Sith.
It was
that was very deliberate, very deliberate.
It was,
and you hear Tartakovsky say, "Oh, March."
Yeah, sorry.
You hear Tartakovsky say that it would have been great to have season 2 butt up against a screening of Revenge of the Sith, because then that shot would really have that impact. You're coming up and then you're going back down into it. Yep. And that was just a great little touch they added on it. Now, as I said before, Genndy was supposed to really lead Lucas Animation into the future. And I think the potential for more Clone Wars after season 2 was definitely there. But as we all know, George Lucas took over the production and they created the Clone Wars series we know, with Matt Lanter and Ashley Eckstein and Ahsoka. Ahsoka, of course, nowhere to be found in the Genndy series. Mm-hmm. I have to say, the guy who voices Anakin in the Genndy series is a guy named Matt Lucas. And while he's very different from Matt Lanter's Anakin. What Matt Lucas does is he really, really captures that Hayden Christensen whine in certain points where he's,
man.
Yeah, he really snaps at Obi-Wan.
He's a voice double for Hayden, that's for sure.
He took the sand moment, I hate the sand, and he just that was his template for this.
There were a couple of times.
For this depiction.
There were a couple of times. And so the series wrapped up, and eventually Gendy's Clone Wars became non-canon, designated Legends classification. I think that came as a surprise to Genndy Tartakovsky and his crew, but they're very busy guys. I mean, they're pumping out Powerpuff Girls and Dexter's Lab and Samurai Jack and all those shows. So he's not hurting for work or anything, but he's a Star Wars fan and he really enjoyed working on the series for George Lucas. And last year he spoke to Collider about the surprise at learning that his Clone Wars had become non-canon and George Lucas took over and created a whole new Clone Wars series.
I think basically he just, it's like a restart. Here's going to be this, here's going to be the CG ones, and they're going to be the canon or the lore, and everything we did is going to be kind of just like, oh, that never happened, basically, And yeah, I mean, we were super, super proud of what we did, and the reaction was great to it, and there's still people talk about it, which is really nice, with all the new Star Wars coming up. And yeah, I mean, for people don't realize how fast we do this stuff and how it's just first instinct, and you get kind of sometimes judged almost like on a feature level, but when you do TV, it's instant. We had 2 weeks to develop it. And then I went to Lucas and pitched what we were going to do, and that was it. And then we started writing and going. It was incredibly fast. And so for the amount of time that we had and everything, I think it, was still some of my best work and our best work. And it's always something I'm proud of. And yeah, and whatever happened. And, what are you going to do? That's Hollywood, as they say.
Wow,
Hollywood.
That's a great
but doesn't
clip.
Genndy kind of joins that club of we've talked to a lot of people over the years that thought that they were sort of in with George. They worked on a project, and George is a guy that's really hard to get close to, and I don't want to say that he's not loyal, because that implies something kind of malicious or underhanded. It's just that it's attachment. I mean, George wrote no attachments. I mean, he doesn't get I don't feel that he gets attached to people and collaborators the same way a lot of other creative types do. And so it was really no big deal. But I think Genndy was like, well, wait a minute, I thought we had a thing going. Yeah. I thought this was our thing. You're the Star Wars guy, I'm the animation guy. George's like, no, I'm gonna get that Avatar guy.
No,
the guy in the hat.
Thanks for the ideas.
Jim, remember we were talking to one of the Imagineers who kind of
Tony Baxter.
Yes, and he next thing you know, he's like he's showing off his comic book. George is showing his comic book collection to him and everything, and he I think he even told us in the interview, he was like, I thought we were buddies,
Yeah.
And then George kind of had to set him straight and be like, I got plenty of friends,
Any friends?
I can't really let anybody any more in,
Yeah, he had filled his friend quota,
right?
And there was just no more room for anybody. Who says
already
that
have
to
a George,
someone? Right? Who says that to someone?
I mean the thing, and I got God bless Genndy, because that had to have been tough, because there's so many elements, especially throughout the 2 seasons, that the Filoni series, I wouldn't say it wouldn't have existed for it, but it definitely piggybacked off of this series. I mean, the series could almost serve as like a storyboard for the Filoni Clone Wars, in its brevity and its shot and its images, so many of which do kind of turn up again. Voice actors, God, Obi-Wan, please, brain fart.
James Arnold Taylor.
James Arnold Taylor. Yeah, when you get these, when you hear these voices again, we got Matt instead of Lucas, who played the first
Matt Lanter.
You said, right? We got Matt in the Filoni. So there are some changes, but there was so much continuity in that there was enough continuity that we kind of felt like these were connected until we learned that they really weren't. At least in
Corey Burton as Dooku. He reprised that role in the Filoni Lucas version. So,
Yoda.
Yeah, there's some connection. Oh, Tom Kane. The great Tom Kane. Yeah.
D is not doing the clones.
There's no D in it. Kat Tabor is in it. I don't know if did you mention Kat?
Right. No.
She's not in it, no.
Yes, she is. She's Padme. I'm 99% sure she's Padme.
I don't think she is.
Hold on. Don't fight, boys. I got her.
I don't think so.
Man, if not, she sure does sound like her.
Maybe I'm incorrect on that, but I don't think she's in it. I really don't.
No, it's not. It's actually Grey
Delisle.
As Asajj and Padme and Shakti.
Oh wow! Wow, very versatile.
But Jason, I gotta say, I thought it was her too.
Yeah, I was listening real intently. I mean, not that I'm some expert, but I was listening very, very intently, and I'm like, it's got to be her, just because I was picking up on some Kat Taborisms. It's just odd. It's like she sounds more like Kat Tabor than she does Natalie Portman.
Especially when that scene where they, I think it's in volume 2 when they're stealing a moment in public. They have that secret rendezvous, and it really, I thought it was her. I mean, I really did think it was her.
T.C. Carson is Mace Windu. He was the same Mace Windu in the Filoni, Lucas, and of course Anthony Daniels. You can't have C-3PO without
they really overdid, especially in the first half. I feel like his processing, they buried Tony Daniels' voice in all of that effects.
Yeah, it was a little thick. Yeah, it was a little thick.
I agree.
Mace still a jerk in
very
this.
Tinny. Very tinny. Yes, Mace is, but man, can he punch fat?
Man, he can punch, but he's still a jerk. You have that scene that mirrors the council scene in Revenge of the Sith, where they're going to elevate him to Obi-Wan is trying to give him the trials, and they're still like, it's very, very similar scene where they're like, no trials yet for you, and he's like, well, he's done everything so far. I mean, except for the trial of the spirit. Like no. I'm like, Jesus, Mace, talk about a bug up your butt.
Well, I assume that trial happens then on the planet Nelvana with the.
I think that is they do give even beforehand. Don't they give it to him before they
do? They do.
Yoda does that little Arthurian sword, to the shoulder.
Is it me, or did that seem like right out of a gangster movie? Like he was being made. He walked because they always it's a total surprise. He walks in. They got they got the rose. They're gonna cut him open. And that's that. Yeah, but I don't know. It was something between like a mob initiation and a surprise birthday party. It was
it was a little like I don't know. He's gone. We're gonna tell you he's gone. Right. And he's gone. I mean he's gone. He's gone.
Goodfellas
the lightsaber against the.
But then he he gets the braid cut off, and I think that goes into Padme's hope chest with the Japor snippet. And there you go.
That's right.
By the way,
That's right.
Is she only holding the Japor snippet in Revenge of the Sith, or does she have his braid too?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's just the
Just
necklace.
the Japor snippet. Just the snippet.
Yeah.
And not the
What's it
snippet of
called?
hair. The Japor snippet.
The Japor snippit. Wow, I feel
yes.
like this is
I
what
don't
my
need
friends
this
must
to
feel like when I
remember you
talk
by.
Star Wars to them. I'm like, like the Japor snippet.
Yeah, but boy, that would have been an interesting little touch if she would have been holding that braid. But yeah, so that went into the hope chest.
Yeah, right. That went into the chest, and we do get the final trial of Anakin, which I remember at the time, and still this time too, I feel was kind of a random event. This, I mean, it does tie into the I think it's the Techno Union, which actually reminded me their scheme reminded me a lot of what they did with Echo at the end of the Clone Wars, where they find him Borgified by the Techno Union. Very similar scheme to me. But I thought while it was interesting, I thought it was kind of a random event to spotlight on the show. I don't know if you guys had that reaction too. In my memory, I confused this event with the fight with Asajj, thinking that was the trial in my memory. Yeah. And then when I was watching, I'm like, wait a minute, doesn't he get and then I remember like tattoos on him or something, but it wasn't until I saw it again that I realized that they were two separate incidents.
Well, and the images of what's to come, which
yes,
that was so powerful to me at the time. And
kind
now,
of Mortis-like.
Yes. And now going back, the trial itself and those creatures really smacked to me of something right out of Ewoks or Droids. They were very Hanna-Barbera to me.
Yes,
and I don't mind Hanna-Barbera. I like it, but it just, I don't know. It just didn't. The trial. You bring up a good point, Matt. The trial that I walk away after those 2 hours remembering is the battle with him and Ventress, and I just watched it and I couldn't even tell you really what it was about.
It's so funny. You think that those characters remind you of something right out of the Droids and Ewoks cartoon.
Yeah.
And so they're Nelvin warriors on the planet. I believe the planet was called Nelvana, which was also the same name of the production company that created those original Droids and Ewoks cartoons in the 80s.
Oh my gosh!
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So maybe that's by design. That very well may be by design.
I think that's a direct reference. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. You say that.
Great connection.
And this has been a great conversation about the Genndy series. And I have a little surprise for you guys. But before we get to that, I was just wondering if Matt, you had any final thoughts on Genndy Tartakovsky's. Boy, that's a name for you too, Genndy. I've never met a Genndy in my life.
You probably never will again either.
So his that guy
go to Russia.
Samurai Jack guy.
I feel bad for Genndy. If things had gone differently, he could be directing Mandalorian, and that's just not the way how things play out. So it's you gotta feel bad for the guy.
It's so true. I do have a feeling though, and Jim, you rattled off Samurai Jack, Dexter's Lab. I can't remember if Powerpuff was Genndy or not. It was on at the same time, but it was also Genndy. Okay, so I mean, those were some Powerpuff Girls. I mean, my God, they're making a live action movie like now. So he created kind of these little mini franchises. I think that he was not going to be as malleable as Dave Filoni ended up being. I don't think George was really looking for that student, whether he realized it or not. He did find it in Dave. So to think that Genndy could have been, it just would have been very, very different. I think Genndy would have come in with much more, I don't want to say sure of himself, but just much more seasoned, experienced, and maybe just less less willing to learn at the foot of the master than Dave ended up being.
Well, maybe, or it's just he wasn't used to working that way. Like you heard in the clip, he said that they worked rapid fire pace. Mm-hmm. And that's how you have to do it when you're pumping out all these animated shows. And I do want to clear up something because people write in about this. Genndy did work on Powerpuff Girls, but he wasn't the showrunner for it. He was part of the crew that created Powerpuff Girls, but it wasn't like necessarily his series.
Like it was with Samurai Jack and Dexter's Lab.
Dexter's Lab, Hotel Transylvania, shows like that.
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about Hotel Transylvania, yeah.
That was his. But I just think it's the nature of his operation and the way they do things might not mesh with George Lucas and his slower approach, his more in-depth approach, and George calls all the shots in those situations. But I know for a fact that they were collaborating with Lucasfilm to make this show. It wasn't just like Genndy and his crew were off on their own. I mean, they were working with Lucas. They sent things to George for approval and received things from George in return. But all in all, I just think it's a great show. I wish Genndy could get another shot at it, quite honestly. Not necessarily Clone Wars, but maybe an all-original Star Wars program. I think he would be wonderful for that.
Or come in and direct.
He can do Resistance.
Yeah, right. He could redo Resistance. No, but maybe he could come in and guest direct a couple episodes of Bad Batch or something like that. Though I don't know if that's necessarily... is that really where Genndy? Genndy is such a he's a total artist. He creates.
He's like a nuts to bolts.
And definitely what's the word I'm looking for? Like style. He's like a Tim Burton to me, where he has a unique kind of style that would be, I think, hard for him just to jump in and not make it Genndy.
Yeah, I don't think he's that interested in just, directing a show.
Right,
I think he wants, like you said, Jason, he wants to create something.
Because even Hotel Transylvania, those series, if you look at, Dexter's Lab and Samurai Jack and Powerpuff Girls and Clone Wars, you can see styles that sort of,
Yeah, he's like an auteur.
Yeah, very much.
But, but it's hard to know, like, what's the nexus between their working relationship and, like you were indicating before, Jason, that, George uses test beds and he'll do it and then he'll say, okay, this works. And now I want to do it grander and bigger. And, thanks for all your work, Genndy. We're going to go in this direction. I mean, he did that he didn't bruise any egos with the special edition, but that was, as we know, a bit of a test bed for some of the tech in the prequels.
And the Young Indiana Jones series.
Young Indiana Jones series. That's kind of how he operates.
Radioland Murders.
Yeah. So if he wants to take it up a notch, and that's just not the medium that Genndy works in, he's going to be like, see ya. I'm going to work with this guy.
Yeah.
Tough.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to say this, the Clone Wars micro series, it's available now on Disney Plus. You find it in the it's vintage Star Wars. Look for that playlist on Disney Plus, and you'll find it there. And it's recommended to any and all Star Wars fans. It's really great. Don't let the fact that they say it's non-canon scare you away, because it's really excellent, and
it looks beautiful too. By the way, and it's I don't know if that's in 4K, but it looks absolutely gorgeous. I mean,
it's
just
gorgeous,
crisp.
Yeah. Think of it as
it fits my canon. It fits my canon just fine. So who needs to rock any boats? Now I told you guys I had a surprise. Today, I was talking to James Arnold Taylor, and I mentioned to him that we were going to talk about the Clone Wars micro-series tonight. And, of course, James voiced Obi-Wan Kenobi in the series. And it was really our first big exposure to James in a Star Wars story. He had done the voice of Obi-Wan in some video games, but we're really hearing him go all into it here in the Clone Wars micro-series for the first time. And then, of course, he voices Obi-Wan for the next decade and a half after this. really sunk his teeth into it. Well, so I was talking to him and I said, hey, why don't you jump in with us and share some memories or a story or whatever? And James, he couldn't make it tonight, but he did record something for us. So we have some exclusive comments from James Arnold Taylor talking about his experience working on Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars micro series. So, Jason, you have that recording. If you just want to go, I have not heard this yet, so it's going to be new to me. Just like he sent it just minutes before we started the show. So, here is James Arnold Taylor talking Clone Wars micro series.
The most that I remember about it was that I was completely blown away when I saw the sketches. Now, that's something I haven't really ever mentioned, but Genndy had sketches of everything, what it was going to look like, how it was going to be. And, here's a guy that's just come off of Samurai Jack and all of this very, powerful stuff. And I knew that it was going to be similar, yet totally its own thing. And it was very impressive because it was also the first time somebody was working with George Lucas. Like that was kind of the word on the street was that, George asked him to do this stuff and all. So we get into the studio the first time and I see the artwork, the sketches. They always do these kind of sketch stuff, which funny enough, I had just posted this recently. I found a bunch of art from the Clone Wars micro series that are like original sketches of Obi-Wan and such, and then finished cells. And that I bought, nobody gives you nothing in this business, right? So I bought these years ago when I had found them in an animation cell store, and I was like, well, okay, look at these. But it was that same kind of thing, showing us what they were going to look like, what Anakin was going to look like, and how Obi-Wan had this very kind of regal, awesome look. But you also have to remember the movies were still being made, so it was a scene, man. No, it was like what should we expect from Revenge of the Sith? Where are we going with this? This is the Clone Wars. What does this look like? So to see it that way was really cool. And then getting into the studio and getting to work with, of course, Tom Kane reprised his role as Yoda, and T.C. Carson as Mace, and we had a great time. It was the only time Matthew Wood did not voice General Grievous, because he voiced him in the movies, and then he voiced him on the Clone Wars, but he did not do it in the show. My friend Richard, I'm trying to remember Richard's last name. Maybe you guys know it.
Richard,
right,
McGonigal. Yes. Richard McGonigal. There you go.
He's an on-camera actor and wonderful. And he was kind of coming in like, what do you want from this? And he was giving more of an actor's perspective than a sound guy's perspective and a Star Wars fan's perspective, and as well as an actor, because Matthew Wood is a fine actor as well, but he adds all those other elements when he's doing it. So it was very different. It was more so of just like bringing in a character actor and asking him to voice a character named Grievous, who we didn't really know as much about then either. This was not the same time and such. So it's just so weird to reflect back on it all and think about where we've all come with Star Wars since then. And so this was my first job in Star Wars. This was my first, real job voicing. I mean, so here's how it worked. I've told you guys this story so many times. You want me to bore you with it again?
Yes,
okay.
Sure.
So, I turned into Joe Pesci. Okay. I'm reading for Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? What am I, funny? What am I, like a clown? Anakin, what is this? What is this guy? Look at this guy. No, sorry, anyways, I digress.
That's the spirit.
My agent calls me in. They say there's a Ewan McGregor voice match. Can you do that? Yeah, I've done his voice for other things before and stuff. And okay, so let me take a listen. And he's doing Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's Star Wars. Oh, well, geez, okay, yeah. And I figured it was for a trailer or something, just a pickup line here or two. I had no idea it was for a cartoon because they just had me matching lines from the films. The ones that you guys always hear me say these same ones, but it's because they're ingrained in my head, just these different, come to your senses. What would Padme do if she were in your position? And, you look tired because of your mother. Dreams pass in time. She's a politician. And all these lines of Obi-Wan's that they had for me that I was then going to kind of reiterate and try to match as much as I could. Well, I went in thinking, okay, I know Ewan McGregor's voice and my voice are in the same timbre. They're in the same space. When he does an American accent, he pretty much sounds somewhat in here, you know, and he's somewhat like this. So it's very similar to my voice. So if he doesn't have, you know, if he doesn't have his Scottish accent, well, then he's got a British accent, and so I'll put a British accent on. But let's remember, he's doing, hello there. He's doing Old Ben, you know. And he was, I remember I was so taken by his, I don't want to call it an impression, but his take on Alec Guinness's voice from Phantom Menace, you know. I have a bad feeling about this. It's not about the mission master. It's something else, more elusive. When he said those little things, you know, more elusive, more Luke, you know, he had these kind of moments in there where he was channeling Alec Guinness. So I thought, well, if I do Ewan McGregor doing Alec Guinness, doing Obi-Wan Kenobi, then you get this, you know. And so it was more of, you know, and it's not what I do as Obi-Wan now. You know, it was lighter, and he would go up into these places, and I'm not a politician, you know, all these, you know. He went different places, and they very much wanted that. Now, I remember the director, Colette Sunderman, who I thank for casting me as Obi-Wan, because she's the one that said, yes, this is the guy. And I've worked with Colette for years. But the thing that her and Genndy would say to me, you know, there was always just a couple of lines. It was always just a couple of lines. Yeah, and I would joke that it would take me longer to park my car and walk to the studio than it would to actually record the lines of dialogue for the show, because, you know, they were 3 minutes. We would record a few episodes at once, but, you know, in one session. But sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I'd literally park my car, go in there, get in, sign in to Cartoon Network. Hi, see the guards, go on, walk through all the things, walk all the way down to the studio, get in there, wait there, okay, get in, get on the mic and say, I'm on my way. And then that was it. You know, Anakin. Was that Anakin? That was Anakin. You know, I mean, and that was it. But Colette, you know, and Genndy's thing would be, their direction would be, Ringo him up a little. So forget if I told you that before, but they wanted him a more Ringo, you know, because Alec Guinness does have a little of that, you know, and yes, come here, my little friends, you know, he's got a bit of, look, John, I've had a lot of good times with this finger. Sorry, I'm quoting lines now from Beatles movies. But, you know, Ringo Starr's right in there, so they'd have me Ringo him up a little more, you know, and so I hadn't really found my inner Obi-Wan yet in that show. I look back, I listen to that show, and I kind of shudder sometimes at some of the choices I made as Obi-Wan, because it really wasn't until we made the new series of Clone Wars, the Clone Wars that everybody kind of, you know, knows now, that I really found my place in it. And that was through, you know, just spending all that time and studying. And then the third movie comes out and you've got these new layers. And we had worked on the video games then since the Revenge of the Sith and Battlefront 2, the original Battlefront 2, and all of those throughout all those years. But micro series was the very first thing we did. And that was back, I mean, it was 2000, I want to say the tail of 2001 when I auditioned. And then 2002 is when we recorded, and then it came out in 2003 because people say, oh, it's 2003. It's like, well, no, but I've been doing this since 2001.
Well, that answers that question.
So it's 20 years now, and it's crazy. But I have Colette Sunderman, I have Genndy to thank for starting my career in the world of Star Wars, and I have all the fans and you guys to thank for keeping that flame of this really cool series alive. Some really groundbreaking stuff in there. And I think it set the tone for so much of what Star Wars is now, even though it's not considered canon and all of that. It's a pretty neat adventure, and it's certainly a wild ride, and it's so much fun to watch. So I love the micro series, and I'm grateful to be involved in any and all Star Wars. But I'm so grateful that started it for me. So there you go. I hope that's good enough stuff. And if you need me to interact with you a little bit more or anything too, just let me know. I can always come back and tell me what you need. I'll say some other stuff. But Oh, let me just do like a little conclusion. But guys, I love you guys. I love what you do on this show. I'm so grateful that you always shine beautiful light on the beauty of Star Wars and the storytelling and the behind the scenes and the fun of it. You guys always make it fun. I'm always blessed to be on this show. So thank you so much. And of course, may the Force be with you always.
Always.
He is the best. I tell you. He is just the best.
Great.
And well, that does answer a question that we had, which was, when was this in production?
Yeah.
Audition in 2001, and then was actively working on it in 2002, which is the year that Attack of the Clones was in theaters.
So he was doing it in post while they were at least in post-production for Attack of the Clones. That's a lot of overlap.
It's a lot of overlap, and then also speaks to Jim's point about what George was up to and why he wasn't up Gendy's rear end the whole time. He was making a lot of big movies. He did,
and very differently.
Yeah,
very differently the way they ran the recording sessions for the two different series. Of course, the Clone Wars series that Dave Filoni ran had entire cast recordings where they would all come into the studio and do episodes all together as a cast. Whereas with this Genndy series, James still has the engine running and the car out in the parking lot. He runs in, says his 2 words, and then runs out, and then leaves it
much
to
more
the
about the
editors to figure it
tableau
all
with a couple of lines thrown in than heavy dialogue.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I like the confirmation that this was the very first thing that opened the door for his Obi-Wan career, because I knew he did some video games, but it was after he did the Genndy series. So this was basically the door that opened up to a 20-year career for him. And on top of all of that, he acknowledges that he sometimes listens to his performance from back then and it's like, oh my God. I mean, and that's a natural response. I mean, I listened to old podcasts me and Swank did 15 years ago, and I'm just like,
I listened to last week's podcast and go, oh my God,
stinking up the joint.
What was I doing?
But he listens to that and he says, he acknowledges that it really got taken up a level when he started doing the Clone Wars series with Filoni. But, also he was being coached a lot more too. I think the direction might have been at a minimum here for his work in the micro series outside of the Ringo it up comment. I think that's
right there with faster, more intense.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I think the character development in his head and in his performance all blossomed then with the addition of Filoni there to direct him and guide him in those recording sessions naturally. And
I didn't
of course,
get
his
any
own
cringy
research.
moments. Did you? Did you get any cringy moments with James?
Not at all.
I mean, I think he's the most consistent of
by far. By far. I mean,
I didn't get any.
I thought that his. I think if he would have done it the same way as he did the Filoni series, it would have been out of place. I thought the more stilted, clipped way he delivered his lines in this matched the tone and the style of the show perfectly.
Yeah.
It was short, clipped, but it did evolve too. So the more there were moments of for them to breathe when they were especially in that second part, the second season, and they're together on that mission, and they're kind of relaxed a little bit more and talking a little bit more.
Yeah,
it builds. No, I think James was great. I mean,
it's not like Leonard Nimoy yelling in early Star Trek, where you're like, what is that?
Oh, right, yeah, where the character choices are so all over the place.
No, this was right. Yeah. And Jason, you're right. I mean, it matches even, Jimmy, you were throwing up those images of Obi-Wan, and it reminded me how kind of, he's got this very, almost, I found it comically, low-lit, heavy-lidded, deadpan look throughout most of the series, and he's just, even when he's raising up Anakin's arm, and he just seems very deadpan. And if I overthink it, I don't get it, but somehow it works. As a foil to Anakin, who's very Anakin is much more like Tasmanian Devil, and he's much more like, I am.
Boy, that is something I, excuse me, choking on something here. I don't want to say what it is.
A good scotch, I hope.
Good. I only choke on bad scotch.
Yeah.
No, the character of Obi-Wan and, prequel era Obi-Wan and how he was sort of, how do I put it? His relationship with Qui-Gon in Phantom Menace, where they did try in moments to make him sort of the funny one. He was, you're right, Master. The negotiations were short,
Yeah.
For example, like that.
Right.
Why do I feel we've picked up another useless life form or whatever?
Pathetic life form.
Pathetic life form. But boy, that doesn't last very long, really, because he becomes sort of like real serious, in episodes 2 and 3. He does have some lighter moments here and there, but I feel like they never quite figured that part out, that George never quite figured out what kind of, was he the straight man? Was he the funny one? Was he over serious? Was he, the kid at heart? Who was he?
Yeah, there's a big shift in him between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. In Attack of the Clones, he's very kind of like morose with a stick up his butt. His jokes are very sarcastic and dry. We came to rescue you, Master. Good job.
Yeah,
and
right.
Whereas Revenge of the Sith is like another happy landing. We're gonna spring the trap. I didn't say anything. It's very much more lighthearted, and I always attributed it more to kind of George rediscovering the tone and style of Star Wars by then. But I think that you're right, Jason, too. That I think he was struggling to find Obi-Wan's kind of.
Where does his niche? Where does
comic
he fit
voice,
in the archetype?
but,
Where does he fit?
Right.
In the archetype, the prequel Obi-Wan, and that's challenging.
Well, he can't be Qui-Gon again because
that's exactly
had a Qui-Gon.
Right. That's exactly
so he can't be that again.
Mm-hmm. He's not old enough either.
He's not old enough. He's not quite Anakin when he's a Padawan. He's kind of a stickler as a Padawan. So I'd never considered it until you brought it up, but yeah, it's an interesting kind of conundrum that they had with Obi-Wan that I think James and team were able to kind of focus on in the
they nail it. They nail it in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no the Anakin Obi-Wan relationship is just so great in the Clone Wars.
Well, you guys nailed it with this conversation, and it's been a real pleasure to talk about this series. I don't think we've ever really taken as deep a look into the Genndy series before, because this series aired a few years before we started podcasting, a couple of years, and I just don't think we've ever revisited it with such intense focus. So thank you very much, Matt Rashid.
Great idea,
ladies
Matt.
and gentlemen. We didn't really do the tale of the tape for Matt Rashid. He is an actor based out of New York. Are you still acting?
I'm still acting. I'm still auditioning. I haven't been as nervous as I was for this, but yeah, still doing it.
Jeez.
So, and Matt, where can people see you? Is there any?
I'm
you'd like to plug
right now I'm mostly doing commercial auditions and stuff. You can see me. You could probably, if you want to throw a few bucks my way, rent The Family on Amazon Prime from ABC from a few years back. But I've been raising my kids for the last few years, and then COVID hit, and oh my God, you did that.
I sure did. Look, this is his. Look at this sexy guy.
Look at that.
Look
at that 12-year-old photo. Look at that 12-year-old Matt Rashid.
You wouldn't be a real Matt. You would not be a real actor if you had an up-to-date photo. Let me. Every actor I deal with, it's always a good decade. And then opera singers are even worse. There's a good 30 years difference between the way they look at But
I will say though, you in your youth all the way up to today, you do have a Wedge Antilles look about you. I can see you with an X-wing helmet on.
Oh, that's
Can't you see that?
impossible, even for a computer.
Oh, wouldn't that be
look at it! Wow.
Thank you.
Wouldn't he
Maybe
be
Young
great
Wedge.
as the Adventures of
Young
Wedge?
I've been given Poe.
Call him Wedgie.
I've got Isaac.
Oscar Isaac thing going on.
Oscar Isaac thing
You sure
going
do.
on. I've been told.
You sure do.
A little bit, yeah.
Tall, dark, and handsome.
I'm in my basement recording with you guys, so neither of them are panning out. All right, so
It was a great suggestion. If you want to hear more of Matt and Jimmy Mac talk, you got to jump over to our Patreon, and there's many episodes.
Yes.
In fact, I think if you go to our website, rebelforceradio.com, and you search for Matt's name, those should populate, those ones where he's on with Jim. Now, you can't stream them there. You can't stream them there, but that'll tell you which episodes to look for once you log into Patreon, if you remember. And I think, Jim, those are all available at the base level, aren't they?
Yeah.
All the exclusive
all
podcasts.
80 episodes of RFR Q&A are available to each and every one of our Patreon supporters. It only costs $1 to get your foot in the door. You can join on any tier you'd like and have access to all of the RFR Q&As. Or if you want to, join the RFR VIP tier and you can host a Q&A with me, just like Matt Rashid does on a regular basis. And so we had to move you up into the big show for this conversation.
You have no idea how thrilled. You have no idea how thrilled I am.
Well, and you know what? We're very appreciative of all of your support that you offer for Rebel Force Radio, and you've been there since we started the Patreon, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate that. You, sir, and along with all of our RFR Patreons, keep this show alive and healthy, and hopefully we'll do so for years to come. So
we're
we
just
owe
giving
a lot
back,
to you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We're just giving back.
Thanks, Matt. Let's do it again sometime. Maybe pick a topic for you and I to chat about. I mean, Jim is doing so much of the heavy lifting on the Q&A. And I really, really appreciate it. But I would really like to do more because I like these. I like this format where I don't have to prepare that much. I just have to show up. I'm so used
Happy
to having
to oblige. Happy to oblige. Yeah, and it's nice to hear. It's nice to hear what you have to think about stuff because you do such a good job. It's very hard, even like doing it with Jimmy. I want to hear what Jimmy has to say, but it's very hard to not flap my gums. And you do a great job when you're hosting the regular flagship show of just letting your guests and Jimmy speak. And but it's nice to hear what
I interrupt him once in a while. Once in a while, I'll interrupt.
Once in a while,
yeah. Very rare occasions when that happens.
But he's always saying something then that reminds me of another point. He stimulates my thinking like nobody else. I will say
stimulation.
Yes,
that's what we do here on RFR.
You got the pen.
I just got to relax. I just got to relax.
From Jimmy.
I
Very
need to
stimulating.
what I need to do is get better at just writing little notes like, oh, that reminds me. That reminds me. But anyway, all right, Matt. Thanks so much, buddy.
Thank you,
We'll
guys.
catch up with you soon.
Thanks,
dude.
Bye.
All right, that's going to wrap things up for this week's show. Big thanks to James Arnold Taylor for dropping by and reminiscing a bit about how he got involved, not just in the Clone Wars microseries, but really it was his beginning into Star Wars and the beginning of his relationship with the Obi-Wan Kenobi character. A lot of fun going back in time with James. And he always makes himself available for us here at Rebel Force Radio, so we appreciate that. James will find a way. I love it, even by sending in that audio. And also thanks to Matt Rashid for a great idea and leading a really fun look back at the legacy of the Genndy micro series. Also, thanks to our sponsor this week, our friends at Novo. Remember, go to Novo.com/rebelforce. Sign up for free right now and get a free copy of Novo's Small Business Starter Guide. Banknovo.com/rebelforce. If you want more Rebel Force Radio in your life, the best way to do that is through Patreon. You want to hear more Matt Rashid? You want to hear more Jimmy Mac talking to guys like Matt and having these deep dive discussions? Well, that's part of the RFR Q&A. That's an exclusive show that you only get when you are a member of the Patreon group of supporters. Just go to rebelforceradio.com/Patreon, and you can get exclusive podcasts like the Q&A, like the Babu Freaks, Clone Wars Declassified Remastered, and it is also the exclusive home of Star Wars Oxygen archives, and much, much more. Plus, when we do the live call-in shows, like our after shows, you can jump to the head of the queue when you identify yourself as a Patreon member. It is the greatest community of Star Wars fans in the galaxy, bar none. All those details again at rebelforceradio.com. Click on the Patreon banner or go to patreon.com/rebelforceradio. Don't forget about Rebel Force Radio on YouTube. Costs you nothing. Just go to youtube.com/rebelforceradio and subscribe and click the notification bell. You'll find out when we're going to go live. But I tell you what, there is so much content. We've been podcasting. We've been at this for 15 years, and there's just a ton of archives. It really has become just a virtual archive of RFR content, from classic interviews, parodies, and bits to the latest live stream and after shows, including all of the Mandalorian after shows. All of the Bad Batch after shows are all there at Rebel Force Radio YouTube channel. Don't forget new full show audio. That's a brand new thing where we premiere the full show audio of the Rebel Force Radio podcast right there on YouTube. Love to have you click the like and subscribe button today, please. If you'd like to talk to us in between shows, you can do so. Email address, show@rebelforceradio.com. Voicemail line 330-708. 330 is my area code. 708-320-1737. That's 708-320-1RFR. And we're on all the social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Just follow us. Look for Rebel Force Radio, or on Twitter, RFR Rebel Force. But above all, please keep listening. Love to have you subscribe to the podcast on your podcatcher of choice. And if it enables you to do so, we'd love to have your review. Just one simple rule, please.
Make them good.
And we're streaming 24/7 at places like WGN Plus. You'll find us on Jedi News, iHeart, TuneIn, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere you can find podcasts. You'll find us right here at Rebel Force Radio. We'll see you next time. For Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
The Force will be with you, always.
May the Force be with you, always. Goodbye there.